Well, I had the thought I might know why people were slow to come this morning. My title was Judgment Day. Hope that got your attention. Every day is Judgment Day, is what we're going to learn today. So we're working with that infamous scripture where we are continuing to explore some of the teachings of Jesus to really look at how they apply to us here and now, which is not always easy to see at face value, and also some of the ways that have been taught to us traditionally, we have to sort of unlearn a little bit, or might have, a harsh relationship with how that was. Judgment Day is one of those experiences. It certainly was for me. So I want to just flesh it out for you, that scripture, and sort of how we can look at that metaphysically, and then share a real personal example that I had of this recently. Give you a hint. It involves bathing suits. All right. The infamous, lovely, don't you women just love bathing suit season? Men too. I mean, we've all been exposed to those standards of beauty. There's a whole industry around that, right? So the scripture is from Matthew 7, verses 1 through 2. Do not judge so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. Now, how many of you in some way over the years learned that to mean as you judge others, God is going to judge you harshly? Yeah, right? That's sort of been the traditional teaching of that. And what I love about unity is that we look at some of these teachings beyond the literal to look at what is this telling me about something about myself, right? And really we use our faculty of judgment all the time. So whether we're discerning, the pros and cons of a move, or what ice cream flavor we want, or was it worth it getting up to come to church today? We're constantly discerning, in order to make wise choices. So to think we're never going to judge is probably not realistic. The crux of this teaching really talks more about the quality of our judgment. And so Unity co-founder, now mind you, Charles Fillmore was writing in the early 1900s, and I shared this in the blog, in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. He tells us this about the Last Judgment. The description of the Last Judgment as given in the Gospels has been used to terrify men and women, and thus compel them to unite with the church. But in this day of enlightenment, people are not so easily led or driven by fear. They are asking for understanding. When they seek light concerning the judgment, it is given. And they learn that the judgment is all a matter of divine law. They find that for every departure from this law, they suffer not in some future time of great tribulation, not in a great judgment after death, but in this life, here and now. And Linda Martello-Whitsitt adds to that, read allegorically, which many Bible scholars and metaphysicians endorse, this is our call to integrity in the expression of judgment. So let's consider that Jesus is actually telling us something about how to use our capacity to judge wisely, and not teaching us that God is going to judge us harshly. We are judging. We're the ones that use that ability for good or in limiting harmful ways. So the rest of the scripture, the key to the scripture is how you judge others will be the measure by which you are judged. And it's less of, this is what I figured out real quickly, it's less about others judging, but it's you have that standard that you have judged others by, and it comes back to you, right? And I hope that my example illustrates what I mean by this. So I just want to be clear that our power of judgment, also known as wisdom, is the capacity to compare and contrast in order to evaluate our options and make wise choices. There are some kiddos. I think Lisa's in the garden. Yeah, sorry. So we use it all the time. The question becomes, how are we evaluating our own worth and the worth of others through the process of comparison and evaluation? Do we start with sort of that divine standard that we are all expressions of God? Or do we start perhaps with those more superficial judgments that we may have? Well, you don't quite fit the mold somehow. You're not quite right. And this starts with ourselves, right? We judge ourselves against this standard sometimes quite harshly. The next part of that scripture that really gives us more clues is in John 7:24. Judge not by appearances, but judge righteous judgment. Now again, righteousness is one of those buzzwords. That's not to judge other people as right or wrong, right? It's to use the power of judgment rightly towards really what you want to experience more of, not in the limiting sort of human experience of it. Eric Butterworth says that righteousness to Jesus meant the actual practice in thought of one's essential spiritual unity with God. It is the right use of spiritual law. To think rightly is to practice the presence of God. To recognize that the presence of God, the presence of the divine, is the truth of you. How do you judge then? Right? How? I have no relation to a God that is judging, but actually empowering us to know the depth and the truth of us as an expression of that life, of that creativity, of that love. And so ultimately, it's an invitation to realize a greater depth of the divine within and all around us. And then to employ our judgment and discernment faculties from that depth, from that growing realization. So, otherwise, as I'm about to demonstrate for you, we do indeed reap what we sow in the field of our limiting judgments. This is the law of compensation. As you give, so you receive. Not just money, not just time, not just the good stuff, but as we give to a judgmental propensity, which human beings have, we just have it. And it's been groomed in us, right? We all have standards that we're always compared to, and I think that's getting so much better, but I certainly grew up in a time where I didn't leave the house if I didn't have my hair curled and my makeup on. I may not still, okay, still happening. But those standards get into our consciousness. So here comes the illustration for you. You ready? I think you're ready. I think you're ready. So I've shared with you all a little bit about my vacation a couple weeks ago, part of which was a trip to Cape Cod. And of course, being here a Coloradan, I was eager to get to the ocean. And the weather looked like there was one window of time, and then it was going to be rainy and 60. So we all clad up in our bathing suits, and it was like 5 p.m. This was it. This is all we had. I was still assessing whether I'd actually get in the water, but probably I could if it wasn't too cold. So there were 10 of us, a slew of young people ranging from 13 to 19, a couple of adults, and I took stock in noticing I was the eldest. Well, that's new. That's different. Okay, and nobody, it was not an issue. No one was saying, how old are you? What, where do you fall in alignment? I was aware of it. And what happened was at one point I ended up kind of leading the group out. Now I want to just preface this by saying this is going to start out sounding pretty shallow. I admit that, and I struggled with it. I struggled with, should I tell you this? But actually where it led me was profound. And I would bet that there might be people in this room who've had a similar experience. So I was leading the group. I was kind of the head of the group leading out of the water. And this thought just came right to me. So there was 15-year-old to 19-year-old girls behind me. And I just thought, don't judge me, girls. Now, there was no indication that they were, but the thought came right into my head. Don't judge me, girls. And then this scripture, judge not lest you be judged. I was like, good Lord, what is going on? And I realized, I thought that through because I flashed immediately then I had the good fortune of growing up in an extended family. My nuclear family is very small, but both my grandmothers had 6, 8, 9 sisters and brothers. And they were always around, my great aunts, my cousins. And so there were plenty of times when I was 17, 19, 20, at the swimming pool, at the hot tub, at the hot springs. And mind you, I loved these. These were like the matriarchs of my family, teaching me a lot about what it was to be a young woman. If you heard my Aunt Ethel talk about smoking her cigar, saying, don't ever get married, honey. You just don't ever do it. It's not worth it. So I got a whole range of an education. But I remember distinctly noticing, and I think some of it was innocent curiosity just around how bodies age, right? How these people that I was related to, that I was a part of, were demonstrating what I could expect on some level. And we didn't ever talk about it. We never talked about the changes to our bodies. And I remember having thoughts like, I hope I don't age quite like Aunt Ethel, or somebody, right? Because I had a judgment about it. And even in that moment, I felt the tension of loving them and respecting them and being connected with them and also having that judgment. I felt torn about that, even back then. And it came right into my mind that on the beach that day. And then I journaled about it a little bit later, and then I was reminded of an experience, my experience with my Grandma Wanda, who I just adored my Grandma Wanda. She was my dad's mom. And I adored both of my grandmothers, but my Grandma Wanda in particular was stable and secure. She was a safe, consistent presence. Grandma Shirley was a little wild, might have drank too much Budweiser on a regular basis. So Grandma Wanda was just my safe place, and I just adored her. And I thought she was so beautiful. I brought you a picture. This hangs in my, she's going to like that. You're welcome. This is in my hallway at home. And I was probably about 6 or 7 when I remember, because I didn't know, this is not the Grandma Wanda I knew. This is my Grandma Wanda. 6 or 7 when I heard her kind of make a comment about her weight and about her wrinkles. And in that moment, I felt the pain of that judgment from her. I didn't know it, but I wanted so badly for her not to feel that way, because she was just so beautiful to me. Because I loved her so much. And so I was seeing her through the eyes of love and appreciation. I was beholding the truth of her, right? It had nothing to do with her age or her weight but the pain that judgment I could sense held for her. I wanted that to go away. And yet I made a note, no doubt in my mind. It made an impression on me that beauty fades, and there was some pain around that. And in that moment, I wondered if, like I, with the young girls on the beach, did my Grandma Wanda in any way think I was judging her in a harsh way? I wasn't. But what I came to know in that is that I want to say it correctly because it was so profound to me. The scripture really is saying that as I was experiencing that judgment myself, I was judging myself. I don't have any evidence that those girls on the beach were judging me, but I was having the experience of being judged. Do you see how profound that is? Judge not lest you be judged, because you're having the experience of the judgment yourself. And had I not had it, I wouldn't have had an experience of the judgment. Does that make sense? Well, I thought it was very profound. Darn it, I guess we can all go home. Yeah. Let me go back to there. Because as I thought about this, the thing about judgment that I wanted to convey around judging not by appearances, but by righteous judgment, which and I'm assuming many of us have straddled over the years, right? Whether it's with aging, whether it's with whatever the physical, temporal thing that we're focusing on, that we're finding value in or associating our value with or our identity with. Those are not the things that really count. Because in that moment on the beach, when I got to the other side of that, I was like, but I'm a lot of fun, girls. I'm a lot of fun, and I know a lot of things, and I'm having this whole thing about who I am, and that's the higher truth. That's the standard upon which I really want to judge myself, right? Do I show up? Do I show love and kindness and compassion with myself first? Because in that moment, that's what was needed. So our judgments build the internal standards by which we come to judge ourselves. So we are well served to start all evaluations of ourselves, of others, of all situations from the highest vantage point, from the highest truth we can muster, that we can conceive of, right? That how is divine life, divine love working in this situation, working in me, in this experience of judgment? Now, I could have just stopped right there and been kind of miserable and not had the revelation that I did. So it takes some time to push into what's coming up and how shallow it can seem and how I felt sort of embarrassed by that shallowness of my own judgments originally and that I was having that day. I found this reading from Father Richard Rohr that sort of speaks to it. We've talked over the past year about sort of our persona as the mask that we kind of put on to protect ourselves and to be who we think the world needs us to be. These standards in some ways affect that. And he talks about it in terms of sort of first phase of life, second phase of life focuses. And I thought it was applicable, so I'm going to share it with you. He says that the persona, which is the Greek word for stage mask, and shadow are correlative terms. Shadow work gradually detaches us from our diligently constructed personas, often shaped in the first half of life. Our stage mask is not bad, evil, or necessarily even egocentric. It's just not true. It limits who we are. Our self-image is not substantial or lasting. It is simply created out of our own mind and desire and choice that is also affected by everybody else's preferences for us. It is not objective at all, but entirely subjective, which does not mean that it doesn't have real influence. The movement to second half of life wisdom has much to do with necessary shadow work and the emergence of healthy, self-critical thinking, which alone allows us to see beyond our shadow and disguises to find who we really are. As expressed in Colossians 3, verse 3, hidden with Christ in God is who we really are, that true nature of us, the Christ consciousness that we all have. Do we claim it? Do we know it? Do we use that power, that presence, that truth as the starting place for how we go about discerning and judging and seeking greater wisdom? So I thought that was, it helped me make sense too of that whole experience. I think I'm having second life. I'm in that process of sort of undoing or recognizing some of the ways that I have limited myself through this forming of the persona. And we can't underestimate the ways that that happens to us through our social and cultural and religious norms. You know, I think of all the people downtown celebrating Pride this weekend that have had to be very courageous against, I don't want to say against, in order to stand up and be who they are in a world that for so many years was restricting that and damning that and judging that. So, we start all evaluations and comparisons of ourselves from that highest vantage point, that divine standard. That you and I and those young babes on the beach, and let's add all those people downtown celebrating Pride, are all expressions of divine life, no matter what we look like on the outside. We all share that common life force within. And so may we all be encouraged and supported in uncovering anything that masks or covers up that highest truth of who we are as expressions of the divine. I think that it is that very force that we first see most clearly in those that we love so dearly. That's, I think, what I saw in my Grandma Wanda. Before I really learned about beauty and health, and I never, by the way, ever once saw my Grandma Wanda in a bathing suit. This is, I mean, I've really uncovered a lot of subliminal sort of messaging that I got and things that I picked up on. But I saw the face of God in her. I saw her through the eyes of pure love and deep appreciation. And that same experience has supported me in loving and appreciating myself as I age. I mean, it's kind of a weird little gift she's given me to see it from the other side and to judge myself gently, to love myself, to see myself through the eyes that saw her so clearly and so beautifully and so with so much love. So this is how we use right judgment, from the highest realization of the divine standard, that regardless of our age or our gender or our race or our orientation or any sense of identity, we are one in spirit. And there is a fullness to that spirit that outweighs, and I believe outlives, this physical expression and all of its seeming limitations. I want to go back to my last Eric Butterworth quote, and then we'll take this into a time of meditation as we recognize for ourselves that we are all the face of God in all its wonderful and varied ways of expression. And I can read the quote after our meditation. I'll let you sing us in, Robert. We have a perfect song.
These are 4 of the best lines I think have ever been written. Thank you, Karen. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. Sing that with me. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. I hold you in my heart. You are a part. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
Take a deep breath and settle into this time and space again, into the fullness of that idea that you are the face of God. You are a living expression of divine life, just as you are. Within you is the place where God abides as your very life force, your spirit, your essence. You are the face of God. We just take a breath into that expansive truth. If you're like me, I'm sure there are ways in which you may doubt that at times, but in this moment, really claim that truth to be your own. I am the face of God. I am the space where God lives and moves and has its being through me right here, right now. Holding that in your heart for yourself. Consider how you can hold this as the truest standard by which to judge yourself. As a child of the divine, you have access to all of its qualities, its capacity of wisdom and understanding and love and health and wholeness and abundance. Just connect with the place within you that knows this, that feels the truth of this. The wisdom within you that says yes. You can feel the expansiveness of this judgment compared to the more restrictive ones we so often cling to, based on our past or our fears or our weaknesses, shortcomings. We judge ourselves so harshly. No matter the circumstances of our life, no matter the physical appearances, each one of us is the place and the space where God lives. And so we envision this body temple being illumined in this knowing, May it be strengthened and healthy to help us fulfill our time here, to fulfill that one true standard of expressing divine life and love more fully each day. And as we know this for ourselves, it clears the way for us to know this about each other. And in truth, about every person, every creature, every aspect of this experience that we come in contact with is also an expression of the divine. May we hold it in our heart as a part of us. No one and nothing exists outside of that presence. This is the premise from which we use our faculty of judgment. This is the divine standard upon which all else is to be judged. Let that truth have its way with you now in the silence. Truth of my being is an expression of divine life and love and intelligence. I claim it now. And in so doing, I move forward this day reminded and grounded in that truth. And I begin any sense, any invitation to judge or discern from that knowing. I empower myself and ground myself in that knowing of who and what I am. The face of God. And again, for our ability to know it and grow into it and claim it, we are grateful. And so it is. You want to do the signs? You can do.
Sing that with me. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. All right, now you're looking in the mirror. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. Now to all the people on the beach. You are the face of love. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. You are my family. You are my family. You are the face of God.
Thank you, Robert. I just invite you to bring your awareness back to this time and space, opening your eyes, rubbing your hands if you need to wake up a little bit. Yeah. So my closing quote from Eric Butterworth is this: don't be misled by the facade, by the personality or superficiality of yourself or others. For there is always that of you that is greater than your littleness, stronger than your weakness, wiser than your follies, and even better than your deeds.